And we're live, everybody tuning in. This is another episode of the Forever Mighty postgame show. Obviously, we wish we were talking about the Ducks on better terms. The Ducks find themselves on the wrong end of a 0-2 series deficit to the Sharks. They go down tonight in Honda Center in Game 2, 3-2. They fought hard, but ill-advised penalties just seem to keep happening, and I feel like that is what the Sharks wanted. I felt like that was part of the game plan to get the Ducks riled up. They're going to take dumb penalties, and sure enough, Eddie, that's kind of where we sit right now, down 0-2 in the series.
Yeah, I mean, this game, they came out better. It wasn't like last game where we were saying, oh, well, there were some underlying things that looked good, but on the surface, everything looked bad. In this game, I think this is the game we expected. The close one-goal game where there was a lot of fight from both teams, and the Ducks just couldn't come out on top. But it's disappointing being down 0-2. But people got to look at this in perspective, and it's not over. I mean, we said this on the last show, and it's hard to sit down in a hole down 0-2 and say it's not over. But you got to have some faith that this team can come back. And I know they haven't really shown it, but I felt like they fought hard in this game, and they really battled at times, and they can come out, and if San Jose wins both games on home ice in Anaheim, there's the Ducks can go and do the same thing in the Shark Tank at San Jose. It's not going to be easy, but I mean, the Sharks can do it. I feel like Anaheim can come back and do the same thing. They just got to up their game.
Well, and I don't want to kind of shoot down what you just said right there, but according to NHL publications, they just tweeted out, teams that take a 2-0 lead on the road in a best-of-7 series hold an all-time series record of 70-19. That's a 70.7% chance of closing out.
So you're saying there's a chance?
There is a slight chance that the Ducks can turn this around. Look, it's happened.
Yeah,
we all know what happens. I'm not going to be bad news the entire show, but it's pretty tough to swallow. This is not the type of situation we felt the Ducks were going to be in right now. We really felt like it was going to be at worst a split, and at best, obviously, a 2-0 series lead. And just to find the Ducks not in this position after the way they played down the stretch, sure, there were holes in the game. But, I mean, you and I kind of touted the Sharks as a good opponent. We were more worried about the speed of Vegas. Obviously, we thought that it would be the Kings would be the best opportunity for the Ducks. They didn't get them. And we're like, good, they didn't get Vegas either. But, I mean, maybe the Sharks we overlooked them. I mean, obviously, I think we did as a matchup because the Sharks are really putting on a good show on the road.
I don't know if we overlooked them as much as I mean. We thought it would be one of the easier matchups. I think you and me both agreed the Kings would probably be the best matchup for Anaheim. Sharks were second, and then Vegas was a distant third. I think this is kind of what we expected from San Jose, and it's kind of scary that the way they're playing without Joe Thornton in the lineup, they've really given the Ducks fits. I felt like the offense was better from Anaheim in this game. But it still has its issues. There's still a lot of guys who really were a non-factor in this game up front for the Ducks. And it's surprising a bit because I felt like the Ducks could push San Jose a bit harder. And it would be a matchup that would be favorable. I mean, John Gibson's playing well. We had pegged saying if John Gibson can play well, this team can be in it. Missing Cam Fowler is going to be tough. But it kind of seems like they haven't been able to overcome Fowler's absence, and the offense hasn't stepped up to really cover that hole, and that's, I feel like, has been the big issue for the Ducks, and it's something they're going to have to work on and change if they can going into Game 3 on Monday.
Yeah, they need to figure it out. The big guns are kind of silent. They had their chances. Let's get into the pregame here. Bieksa slots in. Andy Welinski comes out. That's a move that we were hoping for and ended up happening here. Yeah. And then look at the rest of the lineup, the scratches. Obviously, Cam Fowler still out with that shoulder injury. Corbinian Holzer, Jason Chimera, Captain Canada, Troy Terry, and then, as I just said, Andy Welinski out. It's Gibby versus Martin Jones. That's the matchup we absolutely thought was going to just maintain. No goalie. I mean, come on. No goalie was going to slot in here, but then got to put it up. Let's go ahead and run the intro and get the show started.
Trying to get by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scoops. Corey Perry.
Lilia able to shake away from Solani and skip away to Solani around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal. Bring in the fans, one
a lot of different opinions in the chat about how this game went, and it's kind of reminiscent of what we've seen on Twitter today. Just quickly running through it, Quacking Steve said, better game, but still very disappointing, especially the silly penalties. Ruben said the game that got away. Drew said top line needs to get on the board. Jason said bad calls. And then Quacking Steve back in here saying a little luck in front of the goal and maybe the series are tied. People seem to be split on whether it's the refs, if it's the offense, if the Ducks just weren't getting a little bit of luck. There's a lot of different ways people are leaning.
I would go with ill-advised penalties and inability to finish net front chances.
Yeah.
Honestly. There's how many times did we see a net front scramble in front of Jones and hacks and whacks at the puck, and they're either not hitting the puck, it's hitting a defenseman. For whatever reason, either the Sharks are causing that to be the issue, or they're getting in the way, which obviously is part of it, and a little bit of that is luck. Some of that's just the way the game goes. You can't really control that. But if they're able to finish in front of the net, I feel like there would be an opportunity for this series to be split right now, especially with the posts being hit. Perry hit a post in the second period after Lindholm put a goal in. Spoiler alert, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Not that anyone doesn't know the outcome of the game. But, I really feel like that could be the case. That what's killed them the last two games, for me, is the net front presence and the penalties.
Yeah, and the penalties weren't as much of an issue, I think, in this game. More so the issues, I think, that people had with penalties is ones that weren't called and ones that were called, because a lot of hands up in the air about the Montour penalty that was borderline. It was ended up calling hooking, which I think was really surprising. If you're going to call that anything, I feel like it's maybe borderline interference. That one stands out because San Jose gets a goal off that, and that's where I think all the refs winning this game for San Jose talk comes from. And then, of course, right before that, Kasha was tripped up by Tierney, and that was missed. On the broadcast, they said that he had stepped on the stick, so maybe that's what the refs had saw. So, that's where a lot of this ref stuff comes from. Is it's always, if they don't score on that power play, we probably don't hear about it, right? If that Montour penalty doesn't lead to a Sharks goal, which ultimately ends up being the game winner, I believe, we don't really hear about it. It doesn't really come up. Maybe maybe a little bit, but it's definitely not at the forefront of discussion as it is after this game.
No, it's true, but you can't leave the game in the hands of the refs.
Yeah.
You just can't. You got to come out and play your game and get the win. And sometimes it happens, but the Ducks let the game get away in game one. So even if this game got out of the way, it'd be a tied series 1-1, which is not ideal, but it's not terrible. Now they find themselves going on the road, not getting the matchups they're going to want. If you guys thought the third pair was exposed in game one, Bieksa was exposed in game two. How's that going to look in game 3 and 4 in San Jose when the Sharks can just eat them up with whatever lines they want to put out there? Yeah. It's a dangerous game Anaheim has put themselves to be playing on the road down 0-2. And sure, there's chances where the Ducks can come back and win. It's happened over their NHL history. And, it's not a big chance, but we're not out of it yet. That's the positive thing. But looking back at it, the Ducks are really putting themselves in just a brutal position going into game 3. But let's kick off the first period here and talk about no one thought the Ducks were going to come out and dominate as well as they did. At least I did, and I was blown away by it. And to get the goal, Jakob Silfverberg with, what was like a 60-foot shot just inside the blue line, just fools Martin Jones. First shot on goal, 40 seconds in, all of a sudden it's 1-0 Anaheim as he was in alone, 1-on-3.
Yeah, I thought that hit something originally when it went in, but I looking at it again, I think it just ends up fooling him. I think he was a little bit surprised with how quick Silfverberg got the shot off, and we're used to that from him. He has an underrated release, really quick release, and he just surprises him to shoot it from the top of the blue line and gets a pass. And the Ducks started very well. With that goal, even before that and just after that too, they were starting strong, a lot of energy, what we expected of them after a disappointing game 1. Obviously, it didn't continue throughout the entire first period, but that's how you want them to start, and honestly, that's how they're going to need to start and continue that momentum when they go into Game 3 as well, because it was a good start, and getting that goal, as lucky as it was important to the Ducks start in this game.
Yeah, and the success, the momentum part of it anyway, would continue with just massive hits. Richie with a big hit on Paul Martin. Lindholm drops Kane open ice. And then Boschman with the hit of the series just absolutely levels LeBanc. Wow, that was a hell of a hit. If that didn't get you off your feet and bring back old memories of Boschman lining people up, I mean, I don't know what's going to do it for you there. But I mean, those are some vicious hits by the Ducks, and that's the kind of hockey we expected to be played.
Yeah, I mean, they came out mad, to say the least. I mean, the Ritchie hit was pretty big. Lindholm's hit was really big, and he ended up hurting Kane. Kane was bleeding on the bench. He was a little bit upset, but it was his stick, I think, that hit him in the own face. And then Boschman's hit was just massive. I mean, some Sharks fans were complaining that it was a dirty hit. I don't know how you would see that. I mean, he does kind of hit him in the numbers a bit, but it's far from dirty. Just a massive hit. Like you said, we don't really see that from Boschman anymore. So it brought back some good memories to see not just him, but everybody getting involved physically in the early parts of this game.
And unfortunately, that's after those 3 hits, the play would kind of go back and forth, and then the Sharks would find themselves tying the game up. Bieksa with a turnover. Dylan from the point throws it at the net. It goes off the inboards, the lively inboards, as John Allers and Brian Hayward always like to remind everybody watching Prime Ticket. Goes wide on Gibby one way, pops out on the other side. Just unfortunate, but Sorensen was there to bury it. All of a sudden, it's 1-1.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really notice the boards that much during the regular season. It feels like they've stood out a lot more in these first 2 games of the playoffs. I mean, it's somebody's put some corks or something in the boards because everything seems to be flying off them. And this one, nobody really picks up Sorensen down below, but I guess you don't really expect it to have that kind of bounce off the boards, and he's just wide open. Again, you can't really blame Gibson on this, and that's all 4 goals up until this point that he's kind of been unlucky on. I mean, we talked about the other ones in Game 1 where they necessarily weren't his fault. This one you can't blame him either because nobody's reading that play off the boards other than really Sorensen, who finds himself in the right spot to bury it and make it 1-1.
Excuse me, I had a cough. Yeah, nothing you could do on that play. Sorensen in all alone there. But I was impressed with the Ducks' resilience. They came out next shift and started dominating. And Kasha ends up getting a great turnaround shot chance. I feel like they're able to get pressure on there. And then is when we get the penalty that everyone's upset about. Montour caught a little flat-footed just inside his own zone, reaches out with a kind of a free hand, grabs a Sharks player. I don't remember who it was. All of a sudden, he goes to the box. That spells trouble because Couture is on a 2-on-1 with LeBanc, and LeBanc with a hell of a pass goes through Hampus Lindholm, who's down to block the pass, and then Couture in alone on Gibby. He was very reminiscent of Evander Kane's second goal from game 1, walks in all alone. Dekes him and buries it, and now the Sharks have a 2-1 lead in the first period.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I was going to say, too, is it was almost identical to Kane's goal in Game 1, and, I mean, not much Gibby can do on that one. I feel like he overplays it just slightly. Couture doesn't make too much of a fake. You kind of can see that he was going to go backhand no matter what. But I mean, you can't blame him again because it is on a breakaway. Ducks really couldn't backcheck fast enough. Great pass from LeBanc, and from what was a good Ducks start to the game, and even after the first Sharks goal, they got back into it. I mean, they ended up going out of this first period down 2-1, and I felt like they deserved better. I mean, they didn't capitalize on their chances at times, but they had a lot of energy in this first period, something we didn't see last game, and somehow they still come out down 2-1.
Yeah, so then that period ended up being over at that point. Really, Henrique with another chance. But the Sharks would take that lead 2-1 at the end of the first. How did you feel overall about that first period?
I felt
like I know you said you felt like there should have been like a better opportunities for them to bury it, maybe, but I felt like you can't leave it in the arms of the ref. You got to make your chances count. You got to bury your chances at that point. And although they might have been a little unlucky, I really feel like they just I don't know. That's that finishing ability they were lacking. Yeah,
and that's been noticeable in the first 2 games of the series. I know it's a small sample size, but we've kind of seen that so far. I mean, the one that stands in my mind from Game 1 is Kessler hitting the post wide open in the slot. There's a play very similar to that from Corey Perry in this game later on, where in the second period, where he does the exact same thing. And those are plays you have to catch in on. The Ducks didn't really have too many of those in the first period, but I mean,